Hoy vamos a viajar al pasado para descubrir la historia de unos fósiles. Fósiles o monstruos bastante primitivos conocidos como paleozoicos. Sí, vamos a ir reaccionando al canal acerca del lore de las cartas, que a mí se me hace algo bastante interesante, así que dentro vídeo. Pongo subtítulos porque me dijiste que la última que prefería subtítulos, así que vamos a darle caña, ¿vale?
Yugioh from media but never played the game, you might have known that Yugioh are identical with unnatural monsters and humanoids. What you might not know is, some Yugioh monsters are just straight up animals. Some are very vanilla, but some of
Me hace
them have
gracia porque el
some...
canal se llama El Zoológico, ¿sabes? Y claro, está comentando arquetipos que son animales. Pura locura, pura locura.
sort of creative twist to it, like these pastel-colored animals, or animals with jobs. There are also prehistoric animals. I mean,
Mejor arquetipo
dinosaurs
de
is...
animales, chavales. Mejor arquetipo de animales en el chat. Furro no, furro no. Furro no, ¿eh? ¿Mascotas a sueldo? No, eso no. Pero bueno, yo qué sé, la Ritual Beast es el mejor mazo de animales, ¿no? Digo yo. Yo creo que nadie me queja. Efectivamente, Ritual Beast, mejor mazo de animales. Mejor mazo de animales. Donde los seres humanos comparten en perfecta armonía. Los rescatadores, otro baneado, que es la Ritual Beast. Tenemos en este caso, ¿lo ves? Un halconcito con el Elder. Tenemos al Ultigallapelio con la Larita. Tenemos Ultirauratari. Esto es un maldito dragón, bro. Es que es una locura. Es una locura. Ya encima, el legendario Rampengu, bro. Rampengu. Y luego tenemos el mejor animal de todos. El Shifter. Una bestia, literalmente. Pero sí. Vamos a darle cañita. Pero sí, a mí me gustan mucho los mazos de hecho, la Dinos me mola
some
mucho,
type in
tío.
Yu-Gi-Oh. Some are also vanilla. Some are... yeah,
Bueno, ese
like
no me gusta.
this.
Ese me cae mal.
But some Yu-Gi-Oh player might not know that one of the most beloved or maybe hated archetype is actually just animals. I'm gonna talk about the Paleozoic.
A ver,
I've heard a specific Yu-Gi
el diseño de los Paleozoic mola mucho y a la vez da un poquito de asco. Shifter es mujer. Shifter puede ser lo que ella quiera en esta sociedad. O ella, o él. ¿Sabes? Al final tiene capa, no se sabe. El nombre de la carta se llama variador dimensional, no variadora dimensional. ¿Sabes? Pero bueno. Muchas gracias, Tejo Alberto, bro. Se agradece un montón. Se agradece un montón. Pero sí. Sí, el Exit Paleo es increíble. A mí en diseño, tío. En este caso, ¿se puede competir con Farkin puro? Farkin puro sí. Farkin puro sí. Con impulso y esas cosas, sí. Luego. De hecho, que subiros algún decklist de Farkin. Pero sí, a ver. El Opabinia es un diseño que da miedo. Quiero decir, este es de los arquetipos que da miedo. A mí, si me preguntáis por diseño, me gusta mucho el Link 3, que es el de abajo a la derecha, tío. El de abajo a la derecha, que por cierto estoy viendo que estoy tapando como un cabrón, ¿vale? A mí, ese en concreto, me gusta mucho, ¿vale? Que es este de aquí, que es el Exceed que permite petar cartas, ¿vale? Si veo que molesto aquí, pues ya iré adaptando un poquito el tamaño, pero sí. Criaturas del fondo del mar, sí. Bueno, del fondo del mar de a saber.
YouTuber called them bacteria several times.
Bacterias.
But no, they are animals. Real animals. So, what are they? Let's talk about the
Que
name
son
of their
animales de
archetype for them.
verdad. Animales de verdad. A ver. Yo creo que la que está en medio, abajo de la Opabinia, es el típico animal en la película de los Simpson que tiran los desechos nucleares directamente y sale el pez con 3 ojos. ¿Sabes? Literalmente. ¿Cómo se llama el canal de Zoo? El canal se llama Out of Place Zoologist. Luego os comparto el vídeo, aunque lo tendréis en la descripción. ¿Vale? Eso sí. Me imagino que ya se habla mucho sobre esto en otros vídeos, pero por debajo no te están los directos, a los rituales. Todo el mundo dice que ya murió. No, le queda. Hasta diciembre no tenemos ritual, chavales.
I strongly prefer the OCG name for this. The Japanese OCG
Eso parece
name
como un
is
insecto
Bajestoma.
raro.
For the Korean version, I cannot read Hangul, so I'm just gonna trust Google Translate for that.
버제스토마.
Okay, so the Korean name is also
Burgess.
Bajestoma. That's actually the best name for them. I almost forgot that Paleozoic were originally Korean exclusive, so that makes sense. Anyway, that name is straight up a reference to what they are, the Burgess Shale fauna. Named after where they are
Oh,
found,
vaya
the
juego de
Burgess Shale,
palabras.
located in Canada. This is a marine
De
deposit,
Canadá.
which means
Mi
all of
pregunta
these
es, ¿quién elabora la búsqueda de información de estos mazos? Es la pregunta. Es la pregunta. No, vamos a sacar un mazo basado en España, ¿vale? Sacamos de animal el toro. Luego el lince, que el lince también es otro bueno. Y a partir de ahí desarrollando totalmente, pero sí, totalmente. Pero no sé, me parece curioso, tío. Es que para crear mazos hay que ser muy creativo, muy creativo. Lo que a mí me da rabia, tío, es que siento que Konami desaprovecha mucho el lore, el lore de las cartas. O sea, siento que pierde un montón, tío. Si te explicasen un mini libro de historia, esas cositas así, yo creo que está ahí. Ojo, que saquen la carta Dame tu oro, efectivamente. Esa la compramos, 100%, 100%.
animals are marine creatures.
100%.
Which
Por
is
cierto,
why
si a alguien le
all
está
of them
gustando el
are
directo,
water
puede tirar
aqua in
el oro,
Yugioh.
¿vale? Por el
For the
canal.
TCG name, basically it's just Paleozoic in different languages. Paleozoic is an era. You might be familiar with Mesozoic.
Eso lo pensé.
That is the era
Esto
when
lo sabía.
dinosaurs
¿Ves?
exist.
Esto, el resto, a ver, tampoco lo voy a decir. No tenía ni idea de la especie del PCS. Y quien lo diga que lo conocía es porque se ha visto el vídeo de antes o es un friki de los animalitos estos. Pero el paleozoico, lógicamente, sabía lo que era, ¿vale? Eso lo ubicaba.
Maybe you're familiar with the name Jurassic, that is the middle period of the Mesozoic era. So, Paleozoic is the era before the Mesozoic, spanning from around 540 million to 242 million years ago.
Madre
The
mía.
Burgess Shale fauna fossils are from the Cambrian, which is the
Yo
first
soy muy fan de
period
las
of the
películas de
Paleozoic
fósiles, muy fan.
specifically
Y
Middle
de
Cambrian,
dinosaurios, quiero decir.
around 510 to 505
Mi pregunta
million
es, esto alguna vez me lo he preguntado yo, ¿cómo la gente tiene absolutamente tanta precisión de unos años que no hemos vivido ni de coña? Entiendo que puedes llegar a analizar, sacar datos, pero es muy complicado, tío, Pues yo soy un friki de los animales, juego Melfi, Dino, Hama, más o menos son animales, sí, no es Ritual Beast, pero bueno, se entiende, bro, se entiende. No todo el mundo juega a Delfines Rosa.
years ago. Burgess Shale is the first Cambrian fossil deposit to be found. It was discovered back in 1909. What's interesting
Ojo.
about the Burgess Shale fauna is their uniqueness. Most of them don't have an extant animal
Mírala.
representative, so it took a long time for us to even understand what they are. Some fossils have been analyzed and redescribed several times, even as recent as June 2024. That is just 2 or 3
Lo complicado a
weeks
veces es
before this
conseguir
video
el
is
fósil
gonna be
entero,
uploaded.
tío, porque muchas veces el
Even so,
animal no
some
sobrevive.
of them are really popular, being used in several popular media, including Yu-Gi-Oh, of course. So, if you're looking at the Yu-Gi-Oh archetype, the trap cards are the abundant animals. Well, most of them at least. While the extra deck monsters are the dominant predators of the ecosystem.
¡Oh!
I'm gonna talk about them one by one.
A ver, tiene sentido de que yo pensaba que iba a ser como una fase previa, pero claro, son los que tienen ataque. Son depredadores, me cago en la mar.
Starting from the most abundant animal, Marrella. It's named after Dr. John Marr. We found a lot of Marrella specimens in
Que
Burgess
sea el
Shale,
que lo habrá encontrado,
reaching
¿no?
over
Es que es
25,000
clavado, tío.
specimens.
Es clavado.
They are really small, only about 2.5 centimeters. Marrella is an arthropod, but nothing like the current existing
Que nada, es clavado,
arthropods.
tío. Absolutamente clavado. Vale que le puedes hacer una pequeña modificación para que sea un diseño guapo, pero me mola, tío, que el diseño no esté creado de la nada, tío. Esto me gusta muchas veces en Pokémon, que cuando se basan en regiones, suelen pillar aves de la propia región. Por ejemplo, creo que, bueno, el mejor juego de Pokémon, indiscutiblemente, chavales, si me apoya el nacionalismo, es el último que han sacado, y si me apoya el corazón es el Pokémon Plata, ¿vale? De lejos. Luego ya discutiremos si está el Platino u otra saga, pero Pokémon Plata, sin el remake, mejor juego, ¿vale? Y bueno, y con el remake también. Además es que tiene 2 ligas.
They are active swimmers, but most likely stay near the seafloor.
Sí, total, parecen
So,
inventados.
At first glance, the first thing I would notice when looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! Marrella is these eyes. We never found any evidence of eyes in Marrella
Se lo ha puesto por la
fossils.
cara. Los
The
ojos.
second are these appendages. These swimming appendages is a kind to the one you can find in stomatopod, like the mantis shrimp. The thing is, we also don't have any evidence of these thick bristles on the tip of the swimming appendages in Marrella. Usually, The reconstruction of Marrella just shows swimming appendages with several orderly setae, not clumping at the tip like this, but it's still believable.
A ver, pero es que
The
tampoco tienen que hacer exactamente el animal igual. Tiene que ser una inspiración, ¿sabes? Tampoco estas dos antenitas, que decir, tiene cuernecitos, porque tiene que ser un poquito carácter malvado, ¿sabes? Yo les entiendo.
Regular appendages, or usually called the endopods, are used to walk. In Yugioh Marrella, these are concentrated below the head. It should be under each segment of their body, so should be here, and a lot more. I don't really mind the hook as the claw here, but what's annoying to look at for me is this singular hook as their tail right here. Marrella don't have this,
Ni me había
but I get
fijado.
it that it's just a creative process of making them cool. But my take is, if they want to add sharp edges to make them look cool, just make their spine bladed. These
ver.
four big structures on their head, because these structures are actually serrated in real life. So the Yu-Gi-Oh version of Marrella can use this spine as a blade. You know, like Haxorus from Pokemon. Oh, by the way,
Vaya
I do
timing de
like the
mencionar
fact that they
Pokémon.
made these antennae clearly segmented though, because a lot of
Podrían ser
designers
cuchillas,
often
sí.
disregard the fact that arthropods' antennae are most of the time segmented. If we're talking about the effect, then I think it's quite fitting that they are the
El
one that helps the
efecto
deck
no estamos
mechanic
ahora para
running
competitivos,
without
te
doing
tira
anything
rollback, ¿sí?
special. You know, because they are the most abundant animal there. So they are like very
¿Está
basic.
dejando caer que hay efectos de las cartas relacionados a lo que hacen esos animales? Puede ser. Puede ser. Cuando mi novia quiere que describa a mi ex. Ay, qué bueno. ¿Existía la transacción roba en el Jurásico? Totalmente, 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 totalmente. Puede ser sí, puede ser sí. Porque hay unos que mandan, otro que retira, otro que pone boca abajo. No sé. Curioso, tío, muy curioso. Además que es un arquetipo proactivo, que depende de que se activen trampas para que se reinvoquen. Quiero decir, hay mucho lore aquí.
Yet still a staple in Paleozoic decks. Next, Leanchoilia. Leanchoilia is
Guau,
named
que
after
eso
the
parece un
Leanchoil
insecto.
Station, which is a nearby station from the Burgess Shale. So,
Ah, que es un
just a
tren.
disclaimer, I actually don't know how to pronounce this word. Is it Leanchoil? Is it Leanchoil? I don't know. Let me know in the comment if you know. Anyway, to put it simply, just think of
Es una
Leanchoilia as
versión
a
de
fat white
tren
shrimp. No,
basada en este
seriously,
insecto.
that's the easy way to imagine them. They are relatively small, only 12 centimeters maximum. They are
Pero le han
part of the
metido como mucho
Megacara.
cuerpo, ¿no? El animal parece una maldita línea y lo han llenado de cuerpo simulando un tren. Han hecho como una mezcla, ¿no? Del tren y lo otro. Sí, vale la pena, Roberto, totalmente. Sí, yo creo que han simulado el nombre y le han puesto más esa formita manteniendo el concepto. Parece ser, ¿eh? Parece ser.
Groups though, meaning great appendages, that reverse to these appendages. These tentacle sting growing from their great appendages, usually called the flagella, is most likely sensory organs, so basically like a feelers. The claws in these appendages are most likely used to dig and maybe grab and bring prey to their mouth. So as usual, the Yu-Gi-Oh one is exaggerated.
Claro,
More
que es
spikes,
exageradísimo.
more edge as always,
Esos
but
picos
it's
le
not
sacáis
really a big
garras.
deal. Oh, by the way, what we are looking at here is their mouth part, and you could see that they are
Y
pointing
lo que
their
me
claw
parece muy turbio, tío, esto sí, cuando ves a alguien una carta o algo que no tiene ojos, bro. A mí se me hace rarísimo, tío, pero rarísimo. Rarísimo. ¿Sabes? Da mal rollo, tío, da mal rollo. De hecho, yo me acuerdo una vez que me disfracé para Halloween, tío, de Slenderman. Que sí que veía porque tenía como la cabeza tapada. Pero daba mal rollo de verdad con el disfraz, ¿eh? Tengo por ahí fotos de... Pues esto, ahora que se ven el Halloween, que habrá que hacer algo especial para Halloween, ¿no? Pero sí, literalmente. Literalmente.
towards the camera. So maybe this is POV when you're about to be eaten by them? Who knows what the
Sí,
artist
sí,
was
además con
thinking.
eso.
Oh, one
Es
last
que daba
thing.
miedo porque...
While the
era muy
Marrella
alto.
don't have eyes, Leanchoilia clearly have eyes.
Eso,
Meanwhile,
tiene
the
ojos y aquí
Yu-Gi-Oh!
no.
Leanchoilia don't. I'm curious to why, but I don't think there is any answer, so whatever I guess. About the effect, they recycle banished card to the graveyard. Maybe this is because they dig the seafloor for food.
Lo que me cuesta creer a veces que sean tipo aqua, porque esto parece más un insecto. ¿Sabes? Entiendo que es porque está en el mar, pero joder.
It
complicado.
still fits a little bit, so yeah. Next, Eldonia. If you look at this card, you might think, What the heck is this?
Literalmente,
What am
bro.
I even
Si esto parecen muchos huevos o toxinas que lanza. Parece como si fuese una semimedusa, que esto sea transparente. ¿Sabes? Esto en la vida te planteas que es un animal. En la vida.
looking at? And that's completely understandable, because that's also my reaction when I'm looking at it. Eldonia is named after the Eldon train stop, same railway as the
Todo tiene
Leanchoil
nombre
station.
en relación a
They are
trenes o
even bigger
paradas de
than
tren.
the Leanchoilia, reaching up to 15 centimeters. The thing is, we don't really know what they are. We just know that they have coiled guts in the center and some kind of tentacle around the mouth that are probably used to feed. They are usually reconstructed as a disc-like animal that just floats around or stay on the seafloor. We
Sí,
don't
parece una
even know
medusa.
whether they can move or not. And now, if you look at Yugioh Eldonia, we can indeed see the disc-like body here, but we are looking at it from the bottom front view. I got so many questions about this design though. The most jarring one is, what are these red things?
Claro,
Is this supposed
efectivamente
to
que es
be
esa mierda roja.
weapons? Like a
Yo creo
bunch
que
of
son
morning
huevos
stars?
o
I don't know.
toxinas.
The effect also confuses me. Why do they buff attack and defense? But I guess the designer is also confused. So
Aquí está.
as with many other Yu-Gi-Oh cards,
Basta
they
ni se
just
juega.
slap attack and defense modulation on it and call it a day. Coming up next, Olenoides. This is a trilobite. So, there is a trilobite genus called Olenus. Olenoides just means
Esta
resembling
es exactamente
Olenus.
igual,
So yeah,
tío.
they are around 9 centimeters.
Exactamente igual, no
I
hay
don't
duda.
have anything to say about them, to be honest. They are just trilobites, like an armored sea cockroach if you somehow never
efectivamente,
heard
esto es
about
una cucaracha.
trilobites. I'm not hating on trilobites, okay? I just
Eso,
don't find them
crustáceos.
interesting.
Los llama.
If you like trilobites and you find them cool, then good for you. You don't need to care about my opinion, alright? Anyway, if we're talking about the Yu-Gi-Oh design, then this is a great example of over-designing creatures. It's overly exaggerated. I
Claro,
don't
porque
even
la
know where
idea,
to start.
jolín, yo no sé si a vosotros os pasa que para jugar a un juego normal y corriente te juegas en este caso al rabino o a cualquier cosa. Pero tú cuando quieres jugar a un juego de monstruos, que se llama duelo de monstruos, la idea es que sean monstruos, no animales que ya existan o que tengas referencias, ¿vale? Tiene que ser un animal fantástico versionado en algo. Que también entiendo que exista algún perrito y alguna cosita, pero yo veo bien que lo hagan un monstruo ya de por sí, aunque ese tipo de animales da miedo. Esos ya dan miedo tal como son. O que le pongan un aspecto más, no sé, de depredador, ¿sabes? La Fugaros es el monstruo más terrorífico, totalmente, ¿eh? Y luego está la waifu, efectivamente. Efectivamente. Bien, Spartan, tío.
The spikes, the glowing eyes, the dorsal fins, the antenna that somehow looks like whip growing from the sides of their head. I mean, what can I say? Maybe the designer also think trilobites are too bland, so they add a lot of cool and
¿Ves? Es
edgy
que eso.
features to them.
Si tú ves que
Now,
la
if
carta
we're
no vende
talking
porque
about
tienes que
the
hacer la
effect,
llamativa,
it's one
pues ahí
of the
está.
good main deck card. I think it's a staple in the Paleo deck, right? Just because there are not enough good ones. It's just that I couldn't
Buah, esa
find
es
any connect.
buena, ¿eh? Pregunta. ¿Qué es primero? ¿El texto de la carta o el diseño de la carta? Esto como... ¿Qué es primero? ¿El huevo o la gallina? ¿Qué creéis que hace primero Konami? ¿Pide una lista de diseños acerca de lo que sea o directamente pasa los textos y los nombres? No sé, es raro, ¿eh? Es raro. Lógicamente primero tiene que pensar el lore del arquetipo. Y una vez que te has pensado el lore del arquetipo, supongo que igual se hacen unos bocetos previos, ¿sabes? Pero no sé, se me hace muy raro, tío. Muy raro a veces el planteamiento que hay que tener para crear una baraja, tío. Pero bastante, ¿eh?
Action between trilobites and destroying spell or traps. Trilobites are usually known for their resilience. If I'm the designer, I would make them be able to reset themselves as a trap or something like that. Or honestly, just put Leanchoilia as a vac on them. It's more fitting in my opinion. Anyway, let's move on. Next is Dinomischus.
Diseñan el efecto
Its
la
name
carta y lo
came
hacen
from
el
the
dibujo.
Greek word dinos, which means goblet,
Puede
and
ser.
mikos, which means stall.
Uf, esta me
Why?
da un mal yuyu.
Because they look like a goblet with a stall. Quite simple, really. These are really small, only about 2.8 centimeters max, and they are really rare. We don't exactly know what they are, but the 2019 publication
Mira, el
placed
factor de que sean animales tan pequeños puede ir de la mano de que sean nivel estos. Eso puede ser. Dicen concepto pequeño, pues directamente nivel bajo. Luego comentamos el link, querido. Luego comentamos el link, no te preocupes.
Them as one of the stem group of Ctenophora, so they are in between the Cnidaria and Ctenophora. To put it very simply, between jellyfish group and comb jellies group. Anyway, if you look at the Yugioh design, we are looking at their mouth basically.
Sí, le han dado vida como cada...
We could see here that they have a lot of barbed tentacles, which is typical of Cnidaria. Not to the extent though, of course. But we actually don't know whether they have flexible tentacles or not, based on the fossils alone. No evidence of that.
Además el diseño me gusta porque parece una flor, tío.
If you look at 2019 publications that I mentioned before, which describe another genus, which is thought to be closely related to the Dinomischus, then yes, we could indeed see that they have flexible tentacles. But remember, this card was made in 2015. It's way before this publication. So I guess props to the designer for being creative yet still realistic to some extent.
Cuando atinas con la historia de rebote,
talking about the effect, it's one of the
Vaya
best
crack.
main deck card. But it's also questionable. Why do they banish a face-up card? I guess the logic is they use...
¿Qué arquetipos diríais que son los mejores en lore, tío? Dejadme aquí por los comentarios. Porque, por ejemplo, a ver, hay arquetipos muy obvios que son los Cosmo. El arquetipo de piratas a mí me flipa, ¿sabes? Bueno, lógicamente los de Duel Terminal es que se... Bueno, al Valls, ya tiráis a la típica, ¿no? Es que hay Striker.
use the discarded card as bait, and then they suck the lured prey, and so they are banished? But still, it feels weird that an animal less than 3 centimeters can just banish some big monsters at will. No need to overthink it though, so let's just move on.
Bueno,
Up
sí,
next
un animal
is
pequeño,
Canadia.
como tenga veneno, por muy pequeño que sea, se carga el elefante, brother. Todo lo de DT. Hombre, totalmente dogmática, trifigada, sí, por ahí van bien.
Or Canadia. It literally means from Canada. You know, like Canadian, but without the N. So if you are Canadian and you are wondering what your ancestor from 505 million years ago looks like, then you're looking at it. Anyway, they
Madre
are
mía, el
also
humor,
small,
tú.
only about 4.5 centimeters. They are straight up Polychaeta, the marine bristleworm, with a really thick setae or bristles.
Esto me recuerda
We
tú a
actually have
la...
a
¿Cómo se llama, tío? Al bicho este del final de Shingeki, ¿vale? Si, por no spoilear mucho, porque igual alguien no se ha terminado de ver Shingeki, pero me recuerda al final de Shingeki, ¿vale? Lo dejamos ahí.
living example for this kind of animal. For example, the Cloeia. I don't have much to say about the Yugioh design. It's just Canadia with some creative motif or coolness factor. Well, I assume the green ocelli are just patterns. If that's supposed to be eyes, then that would be way too bad.
Entiendo que eso es para
The
diferenciar.
tentacles are also a bit too long, but it's kind of fine since they could protrude and retract them. Now, for the effect, this is arguably the best main deck card, right? Maybe alongside Dinomischus. All I can say is,
Se nota
at
que este
least
pavo no juega
Canadia
mucho
are
al juego,
active predators, so at least
A ver, no
it's
es malo
fitting
el
for them to
Bucomon.
get
Si
a
juegas tú
better
el Lynx,
effect.
esta carta fue buena.
Still don't get how they book their opponent, but whatever. Next is Hallucigenia. It came from the Latin word hallucinatio, which is also the root for the word hallucination. Why? Because this animal is one
A
of
ver,
the weirdest
si te
fossils
encuentras esto,
from Burgess
alucinar
Shale.
alucinas, bro,
It's
pero...
like you're hallucinating.
Madre mía.
This is the fossil. It's small, only about 3 centimeters. When it first discovered,
Este
Eleontologists
es el que
are
menos me
confused.
encaja, tío.
Which end is the head? Which is the way up? How do they walk? And so, they were reconstructed like this, with stilt-like legs, tentacle thingy on their
Eso se
dorsal,
parece más.
and this round this head. In 1991, we found out that we mixed up the up and down, so we turned it upside down, spikes on top. So the spikes are not for walking, it's for defense, which makes a lot more sense, don't you think? In 1992, we found out that it's the other way around. The black smear that we thought was its head is actually nothing, just fluid. The head is this long thing. And after that,
Oh,
in 2015,
no me jodas. Claro, tú ves esto y... Es que estamos muy acostumbrados, tío, de que un animal tenga, lógicamente, cuando vemos algo que directamente es corto y se alza un poco, como tenemos pensados una constitución de extremidades de cuadrúpedos, que sabemos dónde está el culo, dónde está la cara, dónde están las patas, pues da a equivocarse, tío, da a equivocarse, eso sí que es verdad.
we finally have a clear reconstruction, with long tentacles around the neck and evidence of eyes. Originally thought to be a creature straight out of your nightmares, finally found out to be a goofy creature. By the way, nowadays they are very popular. I'm not sure why, maybe because of their appearance in Attack on Titan. Anyway, they are members of the Lobopod, which are the
Antes
closest
mencionamos
relative
Shingeki,
to
bro.
either the tardigrade or the velvet worm. We aren't sure about that yet. If you look at the Yugioh design, it's quite vicious, isn't it? Looks like something that will chase you and bite you. Also, look at the leg. Spike on the bottom, tentacles on the dorsal, roundish big head, and no eyes. This is the old reconstruction of Hallucigenia, the first one, and as usual, lots of spikes and edges for the coolness factor. Anyway, for the effect, I don't have any
El
comments
efecto
on this.
nos la
At
pela,
a glance,
chavales. Nos da
casual
igual.
might think it's good, but it's actually nothing special when you think about it. Same as the animal. Okay, maybe I'm being too mean. Anyway, last of the main deck cards, Pikaia. It means from Pika. If you don't know what Pika
Pikachu.
is, it's
Pikachu.
these animals.
Hombre, porque
Pikas can be
Pikachu es un
found in-
ratón eléctrico. Esta me la sabía hasta yo. Es que yo tengo entrenamiento de ser mundialista, chavales. Yo el dominio de japonés y chino lo tengo over 9000. Efectivamente. Efectivamente. Efectivamente, chavales. El nivel que tenemos aquí es increíble. Increíble. Pero sí. ¿Por qué? Supongo que sea de otra cosa. No
in
irá
Burgess
sobre la
Shale.
rata.
Alive, I mean, not as vassals. Honestly, I don't think there's any reason to why anyone would name them that way. It sounds like they are just looking
Hay
around
nombres que
and
no tienes que
naming
buscar el
things based on
significado.
what
Si
they
queda
see
bien,
at the
lo tienes
moment.
ahí.
But it is what it is, I guess. Pikaia is a chordata. So, if we're talking about surface level taxonomy, Pikaia is technically the most advanced animal out of all the Paleozoic cards. Pikaia is a close relative to the Cephalochordata,
Pues
commonly
si
known
eso
as
es
the
un
lancelet,
palo, tú.
so it's almost vertebrate, but not quite. Pikaia is also small, only about 5.5 centimeters. So, the old reconstruction have these
Aquí
appendages
se lo han
near their
inventado
head.
entero. Esto se
The
lo han inventado
Yugioh
entero.
design makes them long tentacles. But Pikaia is actually just reinterpreted. It was published in June 11, 2024, so just 2 weeks before I made this video. The appendages are actually gills, and it's facing upwards. They also should have tentacles in front of their head, which the Yugioh design is lacking. Instead, they gave it these cool eyes, which might be
Claro,
cool, but not
ojos,
natural.
colmillos, cuernos, ya
and
está.
these hairy fins, which
Y
is also
pelo.
not natural. Oh, and
Que hay
as
muchos
always,
animales con pelo
lots
en
of
el mar, pero
spikes
no pasa
for
nada.
coolness vector. Anyway, the effect is almost good. Ask any Yu-Gi-Oh player, and they will agree drawing 2 cards is good. The thing is, you have to discard specifically a Paleozoic card, which makes it very situational.
Esta
So,
carta se
just
juega
like
una
the
vez y
animal
poco más.
itself,
Ahora es
almost
malísima.
good, but not quite there yet. Alright, now we enter the top predators as the Axie card. First
Papa,
is the
depredadores.
Opabinia.
Quiero ver el
name means
fósil de
from
esto.
Opabin, aka the Opabin Pass. Again, a nearby landmark. They are relatively small, only around 5 to 7 centimeters,
Oh, sí, sí que se
maximum up to
parece,
10
sí.
centimeters. But they are a successful predator. What's iconic about them is their 5 eyes and their clawed nozzle with their long proboscis.
Pero se me hace muy turbio,
This
tío, ver
nozzle
más
is
de
not
los
their
ojos,
mouth,
tío.
by the way. They just use this like a hand to grab their prey and drag it to their mouth. Honestly, the Yu-Gi-Oh design is pretty accurate. You know,
Sí, sí,
5
muy,
eyes,
muy croquis.
clawed nozzle, their upward 3 pairs of tail fans, and even their lateral lobes with gill structures. But of course, there are still some exaggerated features for coolness factors. Too much spikes as usual, these 2 weird appendages, and these sharp mouth parts.
Que las cuchillas no
And
pueden
if you're
faltar,
gonna be
hombre.
nitpicky,
Déjaselas.
then the nozzle should be a pincer, not a sucker like this. But still, I think in terms of scientific accuracy, the design is up there together with Canadia. The effect revolves around hand. You can activate
Y el
Paleozoic
otro no
trap
sé qué
card
puede
from
ser,
hand
tío.
and add 1 Paleozoic trap to the hand. It's also fitting because they kinda have this long hand that they can use to grab things from relatively far away. So all in all, I think it's a really good card in terms of concept. And now the other XC card, Anomalocaris. I mean, this is just straight up
Esto
the
sí que es un
most famous
crustáceo.
creature from the Burgess Shale. Maybe from all Cambrian deposit even.
Nombre 10 de
There
10.
is Anomalocaris in Pokemon,
Oh,
in Digimon,
vale, vale,
even
vale,
in
vale.
Kamen Rider.
Entendemos.
The name came from the Greek word anomoios, which means unlike, and charis, which means crab or shrimp. So it basically means unlike other crabs and shrimps, an anomaly. The complete specimen is 25 centimeters, but fossil fragments suggest that they could even reach 100 centimeters. And yes, this is the apex predator of the Burgess Shale
Oh,
fauna.
es gigante.
They have
En
2
comparación a
eyes and
nosotros.
2 long grabbing appendages, almost 1/3 their whole length. Oh, and these grabbing appendages are equipped with short spines called endite, which are also equipped with auxiliary spines. Looking at the Yugioh design, it's quite confusing. It's also over-designed like the Olenoides. Besides that, it's also drawn in the POV when Anomalocaris is about to eat you, just like the Leanchoilia, which makes it even harder to be understood. Anyway, as usual, too much spikes and sharp edges.
Sí, a ver,
They are
picos,
missing a pair of
puntas.
tail fan. Should be 3 pairs like the Opabinia. Also, the Yugioh design have this grimace. One of the iconic things about Anomalocaris is their roundish mouth parts. They completely disregard that in the Yugioh design. But I mean, I guess it's also drawn like this for coolness factor. For the effect, destroying target is obvious and fitting, since they are the apex
Sí, este bicho
predator.
es buenísimo. Es el
Excavating the
removal.
top part of your deck is questionable though. Alright, last one, and also the newest addition to the Paleozoic roster, Cambroraster, or Cambroraster. This is a newly described genus from the Burgess Shale. I believe it's described in 2019, so it's fitting to be the new addition to the archetype. Its name means rakes from Cambrian, which is based on their unique feature that I'll show later. They are around 30 centimeters and they are successful predators. What's eye-catching about them is this big dorsal carapace shaped like a horseshoe. Fun
Es
fact,
clavado, tío.
they are nicknamed the spaceship and their species name have multiple meanings. You can translate Cambroraster falcatus as rakes from Cambrian shaped like sickle. The falcatus epithet is also a reference to Millennium Falcon, referring to their big and wide dorsal
¿Por
carapace.
qué? Porque le hacen guiños a... Esto no creo que sea así. ¿Sabes qué decir? Pero es que en teoría hay cosas tan parecidas, pero sí que es cierto que se parece. ¿Eh? Sí que se parece al halcón milenario.
They are
Descansa en
also
paz.
radiodont, like the Anomalocaris, so they have roundish mouth parts. But instead of long grabbing appendages, they have shorter frontal appendages equipped with hooked spines. It's too short for grabbing prey, so they use it to sweep the sediments.
Es que copian hasta la
The Yugioh
mecánica para que se vea el
Cambroraster is
diseño.
relatively accurate, but still, too much spikes. They also modified the frontal appendages. Instead of having auxiliary spines, they are blades instead, so it's more like a sickle. Their tail tip is also inaccurate. Oh, and I just want to say, they made the mouth part accurate here. Why couldn't they do the same to Anomalocaris? Anyway, the first part of the effect is quite fitting because they use their appendages to sweep the sediment. I have no comment about the second part.
Y
The
aquí
third
ya.
part might fit a little because they have a
Supongo que nos comentará que hay animales que tienen que salir. Gusanos. Hay diseños que nos comentan. Uf. No me esperaba que un arquetipo tuviese tanta chicha, chavales. No me esperaba que un arquetipo tuviese tanta chicha. La verdad, me da que pensar, tío. Igual Konami debería dar explicaciones a veces o aportar, en este caso más lore a lo que es los arquetipos en general, porque yo creo que es algo que a la comunidad le gusta. A mí sobre todo me gustaría que desarrollasen el proyecto que dijeron en este caso de el estudio de animación que enseñaron a principio de año, que casualmente salen los Fluides y los Fluides salen un año después de ese anuncio, así que quién sabe, igual veremos algún capítulo. Dejadme en los comentarios, chavales, si queréis que sigamos viendo lore de arquetipos o de la historia del juego, y la verdad se me hacen súper interesantes. Dale like, comenta, suscríbete y nos vemos hasta el siguiente vídeo.